And then there's a rat, talking rat. Hey guys, it's me, it's Marie. How are you? I'm going insane, but tonight we have a good one because I'm reviewing the latest Stephen King, If It Bleeds, baby. And oh boy, it bleeds. So, those of you unfamiliar with this latest book, it is 4 very long short stories made into a kind of collection, and one of them being the main title, If It Bleeds. Can we just this cover a second? I mean, oh, that makes me drool. You might have guessed that I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. 5 stars all day long. I'm going to go through the 4 stories. There will be no spoilers, so don't worry if you haven't got a chance to read it yet. I'm just letting you guys know what I think. So let's just dive into it, shall we? We start off with Mr. Harrigan's phone. It is kind of more in the vein of old school Stephen King, slightly paranormal. It is about a young man who is a kind of assistant for a very rich, very elderly, very, very rich, very elderly man. And he introduces the elderly man to iPhones to help him with the stock market, because that's what made him rich, the stock trade. And he introduces him to this iPhone just before he dies, and it kind of brings them closer together and bonds them. So he slips the iPhone into the old man's pocket at his funeral, and then he's able to communicate with him in a way beyond the grave. And Mr. Harrigan, oof, quite the temper on him, so he has to watch what he says to him, let's just put it that way. I really enjoyed it. It was probably, I want to say it's my favourite, but it's kind of joint favourite with the second story. So yeah, no, I loved it, but I loved it just as much as The Life of Chuck, which is just, oh, it's such a sweet, sweet story. It is 3 parts in reverse of a man's kind of life. So it starts with the end of his life and then goes back to near the beginning, and it's just really heartwarming and wonderful, and has all these weird things in it as well. It's great. I really, really loved it. Yeah, it's all the feels, that one. Stephen King can really surprise you sometimes. You know, you've got this first story, which is very old school King, very kind of spooky horror, and then straight into something just super heartwarming and lovely. I really enjoyed it. Next we have the main story, which is If It Bleeds. This is a Holly Gibney story. I have accidentally read this before I've read any of the other Holly Gibney stories, so I now know the ending of all of them. So my tip to you guys is, if you haven't read the Mr. Mercedes trilogy or the Outsider, which I haven't, then don't read this because it will spoil all of it. Oops. But that's okay. I'm still going to go back and read them anyway. If anything, it's made me kind of want to read them a little bit more, because I kind of want to know the ins and outs. But this is Holly Gibney on her own this time, on her first solo outing. She is now a PI, has her own firm, and she discovers someone who she believes is has these similar abilities to the outsider that she fought in The Outsider. And then, you know, the rest of that story unfolding as she investigates him and tries to stop him. I enjoyed it. It is a classic kind of detective, filmy, noir type story, but with a paranormal weird twist. So I enjoyed that. I love reading crime, and I love reading spooky stories and horror. So having those two things combined is right up my street. So I can't wait to read The Outsider and Mr. Mercedes now. I'm just doing it the wrong way. It's fine. Finally, we have Rat. This was my least favourite story. I did still enjoy it, but it just, for me, did not live up to the other 3. It's a bit weird, and not in a like, ooh, cool, weird. No, just a bit weird. A bit random. It's about a gentleman, a writer, who has an idea for a novel, goes out to a remote cabin, to try to finally get it written. He had a bit of a nervous breakdown the last time he tried to write a novel. And while he's there, he meets a rat who offers him a wish to get his novel finished, but at like what kind of a cost. It's kind of, you know, it's a little bit like those kind of classic fairy tale situations, you know, where it's like, I'm offering you what you want, your whole heart's desire, but at what cost? Kind of Needful Things-esque in that sense. But it's just so out of left field because the rest of the story has got this kind of secret window. You know that Johnny Depp movie? That kind of writer in a remote cabin, anything could happen. You could go anywhere with a story and it could be super creepy and spooky. There's a storm, he's cut off from everything. And then there's a rat. Talking rat. So I find it really strange. I really did. I did like it. I particularly liked his description of the creative process of trying to write. That whole aspect of it I loved, which is the vast majority of the story. The rat only comes in kind of right at the end. So yeah, I liked it to the point with the rat, and then I just felt like it was like one story and then it was another story altogether. It was very strange. Still entertaining though. So yeah, 5 out of 5 all day long. Stephen King never, ever disappoints. He is just, oh, he is the king of horror. He is the king of weird and wonderful, and I recommend this book wholeheartedly. I went for the US edition because I'm obsessed with this cover, but the UK one's very cool too. So if you haven't read it already, guys, get on it. If you have read it, what did you think? Similar opinions to myself, let me know in the comments down below. Try to keep spoiler free, or write that there's a big spoiler in it if you're going to talk about spoilers. Just so we don't ruin anybody's day, because we all know what that feels like when you go online and you accidentally read something you shouldn't and you're like, no, spoilers. No spoilers here. That's my policy. I would love it if you could subscribe. I would really appreciate it. That would mean an awful lot to me. Yeah, so if you're a big King fan, if you want to check out my Stephen King book versus movie video, it's kind of a look at successes and failures of his movie adaptations, because there's a whole ton of them. And yeah, check it out. I'll put the little link to that here. But that's me for now, guys. I will see you all soon. Bye.